The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
Yeah, we know what today is. Game 7. We'll give CJ his time to do a Jays fan reaction at the end of the episode. We understand how important today is for Toronto Blue Jays fans everywhere. I just want to mention that off the top because I know people could get excited about your takes and your fandom. But we are a hockey pod, so we have to start with the Toronto Maple Leafs. It took 6 games, but Steve Dangle recorded a one-taker off of the Seattle Kraken Toronto Maple Leafs game. The Kraken win in overtime, but the biggest story to come out of that is Anthony Stolarz and how he spoke about his team post-game. Maybe it's the fact that it's 6 games is the fact that's a really big thing, but those were some really surprising comments. Just reading just one quote that came from that game from him. How many points are we going to leave out there? We have the skill, we have the grit, we have the grind. It's just frustrating that we can't put it together right now. CJ, you watched that game. You watched those comments. How surprised were you to hear Anthony Stolarz react this way?
Well, I mean, it's refreshing, I think. I mean, I've been trying to see this from all angles, and I don't see any downside to it, honestly. I mean, every good team wants the players to take ownership of the team. You know, in this case, you have a player who, you know, hasn't had that voice, I would say, at least publicly in the dressing room. You know, don't know fully what goes on behind closed doors, but, you know, Stolarz is starting his second year in Toronto. You don't always associate a goaltender being the one to sort of fire up a team, although, you know, there's certainly, you know, lots of instances in the past we could point to elsewhere. But, you know, first of all, he was right. It was a game where the Leafs came back 3 times from 1-goal deficits and did get a point. I mean, it was the game, if you wanted to, you could be like, well, at least we hung in there and got a point, right? Like you, because there's that option is always available to every team in the league. Like, we all know how long the season is. The Leafs have had a stretch of home games here to start the year, but they've also played a lot, though. Like pretty much every team in the league this year, due to the Olympic break that's coming, there's a more condensed schedule. So the option is always there to just try to find the silver lining in a tough date and go, well, okay, we got a point. We came back from a few deficits. You know, Tavares had a couple goals. That's great. He's getting going. You know, you could find a few things, but you know, the fact that Stolarz chose to really call it as it was, that the Leafs were not nearly engaged enough in that game. And I think at times, you know, to start this year, right? I mean, they had a game against Detroit where they fought back in the third period and tied that one and then gave up a goal in the last minute and lost it in regulation. Like, they're definitely would not be a team that I would say is highly engaged so far in the season. And so, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of quotes. Like, what was interesting is it's not like he said one thing and he's like, oh, I went a little too far, but everyone grabbed it and ran with it. Like, he gave you lots. Like, he was talking about the way the Leafs play offense, that they like to go low to high in the zone and take shots on the goaltender from distance, essentially. And he's like, that's like playing catch in the backyard for the goalie, because the Leafs aren't, you know, generating enough traffic or making the opponent's life more difficult. You know, he said things like enough's enough. And, You know, he really dug in. That Stolarz and look, this guy signed a 4-year contract extension, so you know he was a huge part of their success last season. There are some that still believe the Leafs would have won the second round series against Florida if Stolarz wasn't knocked out. Obviously, the organization believes in him to give him the deal they did. You know, this guy, we might not be calling him a core player, but he's core adjacent, right? He's a very important player for the Leafs, and so the fact he's making his voice heard, you know, I like it. How they respond will be interesting. Not just how the player, you know, 2 days later, obviously all the players that speak to reporters will be asked about it again. I don't know what they're going to say. They're probably going to be like, yeah, he was right. But I mean, it's more how they respond on the ice. Is there an uptick in the play and I think the engagement level of the team, you know, could be one of those good moments, but who knows? This is why we're watching the soap opera play out in real time, in a sense, and that was not a turn, I would say, Julian, that I saw coming. But you know, I certainly take no issue with it, or I don't think he was out of line, or that he's overreacting. I mean, this season has big consequences. I still don't think anyone knows what the Leafs are, quite honestly. Still a nice collection of talented players there. You've got William Nylander up near the league scoring leaders through 2 weeks. Matthews has put the puck in the net. Like on the surface, everything is still pretty good, but I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a team that can really push to be in that contender window again, and that's obviously where they want to be.
I do want to ask a question about the Leafs' identity to this point, but I also want to make sure we touch on the fact that Stolarz, he had to kind of tend his crease and be physical at times. We've all seen the clip go viral of him going crazy on Mason Marchment. What did you think of the Leafs' response? I know some Leafs fans, particularly one in particular, not happy about that.
Well, I mean, it's fair to not be happy about that. I mean, there was some soft plays around the crease. Brandon Carlo is a big guy, but on the goal that was scored by Vince Dunn, which came before the Marchment hit, Jaden Schwartz basically established his position in the crease. Carlo's sort of trying to clear him out, but Schwartz ends up falling on top of Stolarz right as the puck shot in the net. It probably was, quite honestly, goalie interference. I don't think that the Leafs didn't challenge that, and probably the way the rule is adjudicated, I'm not saying they would have called that goal back, but it was a veteran player in Jaden Schwartz doing what he's supposed to do. It's making life difficult on the other team, on their blue line, on their goaltender, and it led directly to a goal for the Kraken. And then the Marchment rush happens not too long after that, where he literally just barrels into Stolarz. Quite honestly, looked like he got his arm up as he was doing it to me. Like it looked like I'm not sure if he got him in the head, but it looked like he was trying to hit him high. And, you wouldn't like that no matter who your goalie was. You really don't like that when your goalie's, was knocked out of last year's playoffs with a concussion, and that there's the potential for issues there. And the Leafs just kind of let it happen, right? And so, what's interesting is that obviously that would have influenced Stolarz's mood, but that wasn't what he was actually angry about. I mean, it wasn't what he was complaining about verbally after the game. He was not yelling about no one fighting Mason Marchment or whatever when he got hit there. Like he mentioned, I don't like when there's a 225-pound guy on top of me. But if anything, he was urging the Leafs to play that way at the other end of the ice. If anything, he was saying, we have to be mimicking that style, not necessarily taking runs at goalies, but, being a harder team. And so, look, that's Craig Berube must have loved it. I got to say that. Like sitting in the coach's office after the game, if he saw those quotes, he must have, because that's the kind of message I'm sure that he would deliver. We know what sort of style, what sort of, we know what eye he has for how this team should be. And again, I think that it's really positive if the push comes from the guys that actually have to go on the ice and do it. It can't all just be a top down, this isn't 1962 where you yell at someone and that a person just does it, out of fear or something. Like that's not the way the world works now. I mean, and so, I think that it could be a positive sign, but what isn't positive certainly is the way the Leafs have played. I mean, I know you're going to ask me later in the show for a couple teams that have surprised. They're surprised in a negative way. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Leafs aren't on that list, but I mean, they have been pretty underwhelming so far, I would say. And certainly, 6 games out of 82, does it really matter? I mean, they've picked up some points. They're not in a terrible spot in the standings. They're probably done what they have to do, but at a certain point, you do want to see an identity from teams. You want to establish, especially for teams coming into Scotiabank Arena, because the Leafs have played only the one road game so far, that it's going to be a hard night. And I don't think that's really been the case for anyone that's had to visit there just yet.
How concerning is the lack of identity with this group, considering this is not their first rodeo with Craig Berube, and just the fact that they're in this spot, even if it is earlier in the season, that's a bit surprising to hear out of this group from an outside perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing is the identity kind of is changing. They made specific moves in the offseason, bringing in like a Nicholas Waugh and Dakota Joshua, re-signing Lawrence. Like they definitely have. They want to be kind of a grittier team, right? They want to be difficult to play against. Let's face it. Look who's beat them out 2 of the last 3 years, including last year in, a specific fashion. The Panthers, that's a team, the Panthers have not started the season well at all, But look at some of the other clips from the weekend. You know, you see Marchand engaging with Rasmus Dahlin. Like the Panthers, and I'm not saying the Leafs can go just copy that. I'm sure lots of teams want to copy that. But, you know, they're a difficult pest-like team even when you lose or even when you're beating them. I think they make you feel a certain way. I think they cause you to act a certain way. What was that line they put in their championship rings? Like, no, apologize to no one kind of thing. Like that was the idea. Like, you know, I think the Leafs would like to ideally get to a point where they can kind of go toe to toe with that. But I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's possible. Certainly based on what you're seeing in the very early stages of this season, it's not how they've been, but you know, there is a long way to go here. But I think that's part of what they're trying to be is a team that can push back a little bit, quite frankly, because, you know, just being skilled and, you know, bearing a team with your power play like that's a strategy. Like, don't get me wrong, that works, but it only works to a point in the playoffs, right? And the Leafs ultimately, even sitting here at the end of October, like that they're still thinking about building to be a certain way in the playoffs because that's ultimately where they're going to be measured. And they understand as well as anyone. You get there, the power plays aren't as plentiful. Like it's just a fact. Like the game's called differently. You know, a lot of games are decided in very tight knit ways at even strength. You know, I think that's the identity they're trying to build is to withstand that and to be, you know, a force in that spot. And, you know, we can't be slapping at two wrists too hard, you know, this to start this year. Cause again, they've still won games, right? Like you know, they got into a shootout type of game with Nashville and I can't remember what the score was 8-5. I don't know. One of those, it was like a 1980s game, but like they're good in those games where the game opens wide up and you trade chances because they have so many dangerous finishers. But I think they're trying to be a little more than that this year. They obviously, you know, are moving on without Mitch Marner, who is a player in that same style of play. You know, they're trying to figure out how that all fits together. So maybe it will take a little bit of time. And, you know, the fact that Easton Cowan has been playing, you know, to be fair, he hasn't been playing every shift when they get to the third period of close games, but that he's been playing on their top line. Like, it's a great story for Easton Cowan. And I don't even think it's bad for him to be there, but it kind of tells the story about where they're at. Like the pieces aren't fitting together too well. The fact that he's kind of been the option they've landed on for the last few games in that role. So, very much a work in progress, and I'm kind of fascinated, really, to see on the ice how it looks after those comments from Stolarz, because the Leafs get a couple days off. Now, you were talking about the big Game 7 in Toronto on Monday. Well, there's a Game 7 of the Leaf season on Tuesday night too, with true. Sheldon Keefe in the building and the New Jersey Devils.
Wow!
And you know, again, I'm not trying to put too much emphasis on that one game, but it'll be fascinating to see if you see a more engaged team or not, or if, you know, everybody's just enjoying the baseball like me and not focused on their day job as much as they should be.
Stay tuned for our Thursday episode when we talk about the Game 7 of the Leaf season. We'll find a way to wedge that in. I'm just off top of my head, like hearing you describe where the Toronto Maple Leafs seemingly they want to go. It just makes me think of the fact that so many teams, I think, want to be like the Florida Panthers. That's not a surprise. The NHL is a copycat league, but it's very clear that the Florida Panthers have gotten to where they've gotten to by being bullies and wearing teams down. And I think of the Senators as a team that wants to try to emulate that. They have ways to go to do that, but they very much want to do that. So it doesn't surprise me to hear the Leafs do that. I'm also just curious off the top of my head, how many other teams could you say are trying to fit that blueprint? Because, again, copycat league, so many teams want to be like them, and there's reason to be like the Florida Panthers.
Well, look how much success they've had, right? Like,
exactly.
I don't think it's a bad strategy to look at the team that's come out of the East the last 3 years and been to the Stanley Cup final. And first of all, you're building a team that you have to plan, if you want to get there yourself, that you're probably going to have to face them at some point and beat them. And then secondly, you've seen the proof of concept, right? It's worked. And, you know, the Panthers are a lot of things. They're also a pretty mentally resilient team. Like, for all the, you know, if you want to call it bullying, but for all the way they play the game, they don't tend to beat themselves that much. Like, they don't get in games where they take 12 penalties and give you all these power play like too often. Like, I feel like weirdly, while they certainly I think, revel in crossing the line to a degree. They know where the line is, and they do it in a way that keeps them mostly unscathed, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously they do take penalties, but look, they're a bunch of competitors, and they're a deep team. They're a little less deep to start this year, as we know. We talked about the injuries they have, and I'm sure that's contributed, in part to their kind of sketchy start to the season, and not to mention just coming off the last 3 years. But it'd be hard for me to put a number on it, but it's got to be in everyone's minds. I mean, a number of teams in the East have kind of went out and got kind of fighter presences. I don't know if that's just the Panthers, because I don't necessarily think of pure fighting with the Panthers. I think of more like hand-to-hand combat, at 5-on-5 on the ice versus, sort of like a big stage fight. It's not as though they carry what we call a true heavyweight or something like that. But, it's a fine line, because if you're trying to copy someone, you usually just do not as good a job. That goes for any line of work, anything you're trying to do. I mean, you kind of want to find your own thing, but whatever that thing is has to be able to counter what the Panthers do. And in the Leafs' credit, honestly, and I'm not trying to, they were the closest to figure it out last year. I mean, they had the Panthers on the ropes.
They did.
But it's the emphatic way, of course, they lost to Game 5 and they lost to Game 7 that makes that series feel and seem so one-sided. But the truth is, the Leafs actually pushed the Panthers hardest last year in the playoffs. And, so, I mean, we can debate amongst ourselves, how much do you lean into what they're doing, or how much do you want to lean into what you did that caused that? And anyway, we know the Leafs answer. They've hired Craig Berube. They're, and I don't have any problem with, I think the Leafs actually took a step last year in the playoffs. They were a little tougher to play against. They could hold a lead for the most part. And then who knows, a bunch of two lopsided games at the end. Like, it's hard to know, is that, how much stock do you put into that? Is that 2 bad games, or is that the same team showing the Leopard showing its spots? It's hard to know. That's what you pay the front office the big bucks to figure out.
Exactly. I think you meant fire Brendan Shanahan, not Craig Berube. You said fire Craig Berube.
You didn't fire Craig Berube.
No. I thought
they
you
hired.
had said that.
Maybe it sounded like fired. I said they hired.
Yeah, it sounded fired. So I was like, wait. I was like, don't project too much in the future.
These vocal cords are stretched this weekend. But yeah, no, I'm just saying, by hiring him, what angle the Leafs are going down. I think they want to be a tough team to play against, and they haven't been through 6 games. Before
I move on to the Ottawa Senators, what did you think of Brad Marchand and how he handled Rasmus Dahlin's helmet? It's pretty badass.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have that much problem with it. I mean, he took a cross check. The league sort of gave him a slap on the wrist with the fine, but I didn't think it crossed the line like grotesquely or anything. No one's safety was truly in danger. And then obviously ripping the chin strap off it was just sending a little message. I mean,
it's a message.
I mean, look, Marchand he's a master, man. He could write the book, whatever that book is, but he's still going.
I got to talk to him a couple weeks ago when I was in Florida, and just talking to him that whole time for a story I'm working on, just the aura around him. He does not give a damn. He's like, you kind of understand this at your age. You get to a point you don't give a damn anymore about things. He's just kind of reached that point in his life, in his NHL career. Just, I don't care. Like, I'm just gonna be that guy.
I saw him even quote the Patrick Waugh quote that he's got 2 Stanley Cup rings in his ear. Why would he care about? His place in history is secure. He's got the cups. He's loving life. He's still battling to make the Canadian Olympic team this year, but I feel like he should feel really great about his career, and everything now is I would say, including last year's Stanley Cup with Florida, is kind of bonus, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's got to be a great spot to be, and he's only signed until he's about 58 too, so he's going to be around for a while.
No, Brad Marchand here forever. Anyway, love that first segment. Love the talk on Marchand. Let's go on to the Ottawa Senators. Their start's a little bit weird. They're at 2-4. They had a weird game themselves against the New York Islanders. One particular news story that's kind of circled around, we've seen some reports about Shane Pinto. He's an RFA coming this summer, but he is off to a hot start in terms of goals. Last I checked, he should be still at the top, or at least tied for the top in goals. And that price might be going up for one Shane Pinto. It's been out there. We've been able to confirm it. Shane Pinto was offered an 8-year deal from the Ottawa Senators. It doesn't appear to be imminent in terms of a contract being done right now. But I am very curious at the fact that Shane Pinto is off to this good start. He's finding himself in situations where he's playing defensively, offensively, getting power play time. I guess we'll know in due time, but I wonder what Steve Staios and Louis Gross are thinking right now as with that contract situation. They're trying to play it out as best as they can, but if Shane Pinto picks this up, I wonder how things accelerate.
Well, they only have to accelerate if the Senators keep upping their offer, right? I mean, the reality is they don't have to sign anything during this year. There's no danger of Shane Pinto leaving Ottawa in the summer, I don't believe. I mean, obviously, offer sheets are allowed and things like that, but like it's not like we're a long way from that ever entering the conversation as a negotiation piece. You know, there was a few teams that kind of went a little below the radar just because there were so many signings right at the end of training camp. But the Senators were among a few teams that tried to extend their RFAs early and weren't able to do it. You know, there was these discussions with the Pinto camp go back to the off season, and there was a window there to try to get him signed before the season. It didn't happen. You know, the same happened with Utah and Logan Cooley. You know, the Blackhawks tried to sign Connor Bedard prior to the year, and that didn't happen. You know, I do expect all of these players at some point, very likely, to sign with their teams and to sign really big contracts. Now, the beauty for Shane Pinto is that they had those discussions, and then no one had seen him play yet. And all of a sudden, he plays 6 games and he has 7 goals. That's a good spot to be. You know, all of a sudden, you know, I think a little more leverage in the very short term goes his way. Now, I would expect that goal total will even out over time. You know, I don't think he's going to score a 93 goal season and set a new NHL record. But at the same time, it's a great start, and he had a nice finish the last year. And I just think that, you know, it's clearly a player the Senators value. And, you know, the one thing they can do is offer that 8-year contract until June 30th, right? So they have, if there's one positive that each of these teams could use as kind of a lever to maybe get a deal done, is going to 8 years. That ability is going to be reduced with the new CBA as of next summer. So if any of these players sign early, wouldn't be surprised to me to see the teams get them on 8-year contracts, because I think, you know, it's an extra piece. It's going to be more money. It's a little more security for the player and for the team. You know, you're buying the best years of that player's services. So I'm with you. Like, I don't get any reason to believe this is going to happen this week. Doesn't mean it won't, though. I mean, that it's kind of in that world where, you know, I'm sure the Senators would love to have this done, but you need 2 to tango. And if you're Shane Pinto, quite honestly, and Louis Gross, you know, an agent who's been around a long, long time and counseled a lot of players through a lot of situations like this, you know, I think that there can be some value in just let it play out. If you're having a great season, the number is going up, right? That's why whenever it seems like you guys are in the dressing room there's someone yelling cha-ching in the background. I mean, everybody knows the deal here, the teammates too. And Pinto's had a really, obviously really promising start to his career, but he might be he might be in the process of taking it to another level, which could put him into another financial stratosphere if he waits this out. So, you know, I think if anything, that it leans to it probably going that way, unless the Senators really get aggressive and push the issue and up the money and you know, give him a deal he almost can't refuse. That's probably what it's going to take. Because if you're feeling good and you don't have that contract, I mean, if you're him, why change it? You know that every goal you score, it sounds weird, but it's like getting you closer to where you want to be financially. Like it's that at the end of the day, especially goal scoring for forwards. I mean, that tends to be the main thing that you haggle over when you're finding, you know, comparable contracts and negotiations. There's obviously all kinds of nuance. You know, some players kill penalties, and they go deep in these negotiations. But what tends to get players paid is if you're a forward who scores goals. I mean, you sort down the most highest paid players in goal scoring column, and you're going to find a pretty strong correlation there.
And if you're Shane Pinto and you're proving to your organization that you can kill penalties and score goals, and you look at comparables maybe on your team, a guy like Dylan Cousins, who you get in a trade who's making 7.1 per, I have a hard time thinking if you're Louis Gross and you're Shane Pinto that your AAV doesn't start with at least 7.5 and up. Like,
right. And we're in the new environment too, right? Like that's probably more than anything. That's the reason when I mentioned that there's a series of those RFAs that didn't sign. I think the hardest thing for all of them, it's not because they don't want to sign, but is figuring out what their fair value is in this market where everything's going up. It's not easy for Cooley and the Mammoth. It's not easy for Bedard and the Blackhawks. And I think Pinto is in a similar boat. So I'm with you. I mean, I'd be surprised if he signs a long-term contract that isn't above the number you mentioned, but we'll have to see how this goes. This could truly be a story that we're still talking about into the summer. There's definitely nothing that means the sides have to come together and get the deal done now, but the 8 years is a little carrot, an extra carrot. And if the Senators keep watching Pinto play at the level he's playing at, maybe they'll ultimately push the money higher and try to force a player to take that deal now versus like letting it play out.
It's either that or we keep hearing Nick Cousins say ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. He did it in Tampa. I'm pretty sure it was him the other night. That's going to keep going. Any other general thoughts on the 2-4-0 start? Obviously, they're not going to have Brady Tkachuk for at least the next 2 months with a right thumb injury. I'm curious to see how their depth kind of shakes out for them. We already talked about the fact that they would like to try a big swing in terms of a trade. Wonder if Brady being out kind of intensifies that need. I'm still curious how they're able to. I mean, they found a way to get a guy like Dylan Cousins and Fabian Zetterlund with some of the roster trades they made last year. Just curious what Steve Staios could even ponder doing with the roster he has right now.
Well, in the here and now, the players in the lineup have to allow fewer goals. I mean, there's just no way around it. The Sens have allowed the most goals in the league as of this recording. And a lot of that's, I know, been on the penalty kill. Like some of it is literally just special teams related. Because if you actually look at some of the numbers for the Senators, like they're handling their own at 5-on-5. I mean, they've been outscored a little bit there, but it's not like they're getting dominated, run out of the rink. But you can't lose, like they're losing 5-4 and stuff, right? Like those.
You lost 8-4 to Buffalo. You can't lose 8-4 to Buffalo.
Right. And what was 5-4 to the Islanders, right?
Yes.
Was it the Islanders they played? Yeah, on the weekend.
Yes.
And, it's just, I guess my point is they're right in that game and you lose it in the last minute and a half, whatever. They have to keep the puck out of the net. And so I do put that on the goalies, but it's obviously on the play in front of them. And then, the specialty teams, they got to find an answer. I mean, I know it's boring, and Travis Green, I saw a quote, he's done talking about it for now because he's getting asked about it. But if you're getting asked about your penalty kill, it's usually because either they're on a really hot run and they haven't allowed a goal in like 3 weeks, or it's the situation that Ottawa's in and it's costing them games and it's costing them points. And obviously the coaching staff knows that better than anyone. They're focused on it on a deeper level than you and I could ever be, looking for answers or personnel changes or whatever it's going to take. But my hot take on the Sens is do not keep allowing 5 goals a game or else it's going to be a long season. But I'm not. Whoa. My level of concern isn't off the charts for them. Like I did consider them for one of my 2 teams that's like off to a surprisingly poor start. And just because of some of the things you see under the hood, like it's not a great start by any means. And it's not great losing your captain, but I think there's a couple other situations that are a little more surprising on the negative side.
I'm going to still need some aloe vera after your fiery take on the Ottawa Senators. Ouch. This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by DraftKings. All your favorite NBA players are back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is the place to bet on NBA stars this season. New customers bet just $5 and get 3 months of NBA League Pass, plus score $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code SDPN. That's code SDPN. Bet $5 and get 3 months of League Pass, plus get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-7-897-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. NBA League Pass auto renews until canceled. Additional terms at dkng.com/audio. Limited time offer. We've teased it enough. You did some homework ahead of this show. I wanted you to just give me some teams. Specifically, I wanted like one on the good side, one on the bad side.
I thought you wanted 2 and 2.
I've wanted like one for either, but if you did more, I will gladly take the extra credit that you did. Essentially, what I want is this. Of the teams who have started well and the teams who have started bad, which teams stand out to you the most?
Well, it would be disingenuous if I gave you any answer on the positive that didn't include the Pittsburgh Penguins, because on any time we brought them up or our prediction episode, like I definitely have said that they're a team I thought could be at the bottom of the league this year, and they're 4-2. And so I don't know how sustainable it is. I'm not all of a sudden touting them as a team I think is going to make an improbable run to the playoffs, but they've played 6 games. They've won 4 of them. They've been through California on a road trip. It's not even like they've, had the easiest schedule or anything like that. And I have to call that a surprise because I was not expecting much out of the Penguins. And so I would say for me, of all the teams that are off to a surprise, like a hot start or a pretty good start in the standings, that's got to be one. The other one I had actually, and it's not surprise, maybe this is where it's like I'm playing a little bit with the spirit of what you're asking, but I actually think Utah has had and they were a team I was not down on, but I just sort of saw them kind of being in the middle. But again, very, 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 very early days. But they've won all 3 games. They've played at home. Again, some of the under the hood stuff for them, like they've really controlled play at 5-on-5 in a nice way that I think you feel good about if you're looking at the process of the team. It's looked pretty good with Peterka there. That was obviously a big trade that they made in the offseason. Dylan Guenther's off to a nice start. Like I don't know how surprised I am, but I felt like they were the other team I should spotlight or highlight based on, a good first 2 weeks of the season that, that there could be some very early signs there that they're going to be a little harder to play against. And I think even a lot of people gave them credit for. I know the fun of this exercise is we're doing it so early, and I'm worried I'm going to bless someone with a 3-game losing streak or something after saying this, and it's not going to look so good. But those were the 2 that I identified as kind of the biggest surprise. I mean, like Carolina's undefeated at this point, but if you remember, I picked them to be in the Stanley Cup final, so I can't really call that a surprise. I mean, it's good for them. I mean, it's an amazing start, but.
What about Detroit? 5 wins in a row to start their season. They lost their first game and then they've since won 5, but they're right at the top of their division.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just looking at, first of all, I didn't think Detroit was going to be bad. And secondly, I'm not buying that this is a harbinger of things. Like I still think they're going to come back to the pack. Like I was trying to blend what I've seen, what I've heard, where they are in the standings, and then obviously trying to look at some of basically the 5-on-5 numbers to see, that tells us a lot about what happens in the games. And so I'm not down on Detroit, don't get me wrong, but I feel like Utah, like what I'm seeing with the Utah start, and then just the fact that Pittsburgh is far more competitive than I was expecting, that was what pushed those 2 teams ahead. I did consider Detroit. I didn't miss their 5-1 start. But I don't know. That looks to me like there's some room to go the other direction.
Okay, we're going to consider Detroit as an honorable mention for this exercise. But I do like Utah and Pittsburgh for your picks because Utah, I feel like they've just been on this trajectory where they've been trending upward, and for them to be in this spot is actually really exciting. Pittsburgh, we all put them as the lone team competing for the Gavin McKenna sweepstakes at one point.
They could still get there.
They could still get there, but they're not actively trying to do that right now.
Right. The fact that I'm like sizing up like 4 of their players for the trade board it's not good. It's not good if they're going to be in a playoff spot. But anyway,
when's that trade board coming out? When's that trade board coming out? I don't know. Are you my editor? There's been a lot going on the last few weeks, but any day, at some point this week, probably. There is a world I probably could have like edited something you've done if like you joined The Athletic like years earlier or something. I don't know. There's a world that could have happened.
We got the big front office rankings coming out this week, which is a really time consuming project, but it's actually very interesting. Basically, going around and asking executives around the league to rank the top 5 front offices. And anyway, I won't spoil any of the details because I think it comes out Wednesday. So maybe something we can discuss a little more in depth on Thursday's episode.
Got you on that. All right, give me some teams you're surprised about their starts in the negative sense.
There's a couple. Like there's actually, I feel like there was more teams that I could have spotlighted in a negative sense that surprised me than in a positive. I think I have to start with Tampa. It's not just the Lightning's record. It's they have not had the shot share as much as we're used to seeing. I thought that, they were a team I think a lot of people looked at with the Panthers potentially falling off, the Leafs, losing Marner, like that. A lot of people were touting them as an Atlantic Division champion type of team. And look, they still could be, but the first 2 weeks of the season haven't been great. And I don't think you can all hang it on like, Vasilevsky, missed time in camp, or like, to me, it looks a little, again, very, very early. They might reel off 5 straight wins from here, and I'm going to eat my words. But like, it just looks like there's a little more concern. There should be some concern with the way they played. So I had them at the top. My other one actually is the Minnesota Wild, and they're not right at the bottom of the standings because they picked up some points, but they've scored 6 goals at even strength. And so good for them. I guess the positive is they're not playing great, but they've squeezed out some points. So like they're still treading water. But, I would have thought Minnesota, getting the Kaprizov deal done. To me, they were sort of like an emerging team. And again, still could be. I don't want to make any of this declarative after 6 games or so of a season. But the Wild, like there's some question marks about that start. That's really tough. I could have went with LA. I looked at the Kings. Now their start's a little clouded by some injuries. Obviously, Kopitar has been out here of late, but they've sort of had the unlucky injury bug early. But man, there's a few teams that are either you had them as surefire playoff teams or like very likely playoff teams that are under some adversity. I mean, look, you could even went to Edmonton again. Honestly, now the Oilers came out to New York for a week. Didn't go so well. They snuck out a win at MSG and then lost the next 2 games. They've also been accustomed to kind of slow starts. Like it's almost like if you weren't watching the last 2 years, where the first month of the season wasn't too kind to them in either, but they got to play right till mid to late June. Maybe they earn a little more benefit of the doubt, but they're another team that has kind of had a scratchy beginning to the year. But I kind of feel like they're going to figure it out. So anyway, there's a lot to choose from there, but I ultimately settled on Tampa and Minnesota as my 2 teams.
You mentioned Edmonton. I'm actively trying to look this up right now because Connor McDavid, I believe, has played 6 games. He has not scored a goal. I wonder what's the longest season starting stretch he's ever had where he didn't get a goal. Like, I'm wondering if this is it.
I would guess this is it. I don't know. And that's going to take you too long to look up, and we don't have a stats department. So,
if you stall a little bit, I've been able to go through half his seasons. I'm starting to feel pretty confident this might actually be it because he comes to town. He comes to town on Tuesday. It was a pretty good opportunity for him to score against the Ottawa Senators.
Right. It's like two forces meeting that, it's going to have to go. But the thing is, he wanted to score 50 this year. He said it out loud. Right. And he could still get there. Maybe it starts with a 7-goal night in Ottawa. I mean, let's see what happens. But I'm just being exaggerative, of course.
I know.
Although it would be quite something if he had 7 goals after I made that joke. But yeah, it hasn't not quite clicked at Edmonton yet. But I do feel like some teams get, you almost give them an extra 2 weeks before you're overreacting. I mean, maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's like some media thing that I'm just making up. But we were on the Sabres with 3 straight losses, right? Just because of who they are. And I think we tried to spell out why, it's sort of like the 14 years of history prior to those 3 straight losses you can't ignore. Whereas I feel like you could look at the Oilers' last couple seasons and be like, yeah, they lost a lot of games in October, but then they won a lot the rest of the year and found their way to the Stanley Cup Finals. So I'm not smashing that panic button just yet for the Oilers, and that's why they didn't ultimately earn a spot here. But they got an honorable mention, and you don't want that in that category.
Buffalo seeking its 3rd straight win tonight, being Monday night, against the Montreal Canadiens. That would be really interesting for them to find a way to get 3 wins in a row, considering how their season started.
I'm demanding that our editors, by the way, our producers, our fearless leaders, clip the fact that I said Buffalo was going to make the playoffs when they were 0-3.
and my reaction after you
and your reaction, which was just
specifically mentioned the chat. Seriously, I was like, what? Just out of nowhere. They could do it. That would be really cool. Again,
I know, but I want it clipped right now because I bought that stock as low as you could buy it. So I want receipts if it ever comes in that I could take a little twirl of a happy dance.
For sure. Also, I'm right. Connor McDavid, 6 game stretch, the longest season opening stretch without a goal. Last year, he had 4 games. His first 4 games of the year, he didn't have a goal. This year, 6 games. So we'll see how it goes for him in his game 7.
He's going to have like 10 shots on Tuesday.
Oh my God.
I know, you don't know about goals, but he's going to be bringing he's going to be bringing the heat.
Okay. One more thing before we get to Ask CJ. Jaromir Jagr is still playing at the age of 53. He suited up for a game with Rytiri Kladno. Hopefully I got that pronunciation right. For 38
Kladno Knights. The Knights.
Kladno Knights. So that's their actual team name. A 38th season in professional hockey. This is a guy who made his debut professionally in 1988. And the earliest Jagr will be eligible to clear the Hall of Fame 3-year window waiting period will be in 2029. Why is this man is just still playing? What a story.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things eventually you do almost it's impossible not to take it for granted because what's our update here? Our update is still going, but at a certain point you have to recognize even when Gordie Howe played in X number of decades, when he was in his 50s, he came back and played 1 game, I think, for the Detroit Vipers. It was to achieve that, and it was still an awesome achievement. But Jaromir Jagr, and I realize the Czech League is a fair ways off the NHL in terms of quality of play, but there's guys that are walking out of the Czech League and playing in the NHL the next season, right? It's not so far off. This isn't the beer league that he's playing in either, and it's insane. It defies logic. I think it's just a testament that hockey is literally his life. He has had to put so much into being ready to play hockey for 38 seasons of professional hockey, year after year after year, all the personal sacrifices that takes to do it. Whereas I just think most players either get injured or lose interest or, get married and have kids, and have their attention divided in a way, all the things that are natural, that hasn't happened for Jagr, right? He's an unmarried guy without children. So he's literally, this is his family. This is his life. And it's quite something. I have always wondered, and I've written already one story about this a couple of years ago where I started asking people, I just wonder if the Hockey Hall of Fame ever relents and basically bypasses that 3-year waiting period to put him in, because there's clearly no debate about his credentials. I mean, second all-time leading scorer, 5 scoring titles, blah, 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 2 Stanley Cups, an Olympic gold, 2 world championship gold. He's literally done everything. They might need 2 plaques to actually, when they write out all of his accomplishments, when they put him in the Hall of Fame, but they've been steadfast. Wayne Gretzky was the last player, Julian, who went directly from finishing his career into the Hall of Fame. That was in 1999 when he retired. And at that time they said, okay, this is the end of that, waiving that period, because they were worried about a couple things. First of all, a few players had retired, gone into the Hall of Fame and come back and played. Mario Lemieux among them, Guy Lafleur back in the day. And they thought that was kind of a weird look. And secondly, and I think more importantly, is they were worried that they were creating a tiered Hall of Fame. The players that skipped the waiting period, those that had to wait, that wasn't the intent, right? The intent is to honor the best players that have ever played. And so I just wonder if they hold fast to this rule. That maybe they will. I don't even know if there's a push, quite honestly. I might be the one-man push because I just keep pointing out how absurd it is. Like Jagr, this is just a fun one I found. You know, Duncan Keith is a player going in November as part of the 2025 class in the Hall of Fame. Jaromir Jagr was 14 years into his NHL career when Duncan Keith got to the NHL.
Jeez.
Like he had already, you might argue in all seriousness, I'd have to go back and look at it. But if Jaromir Jagr stopped his career at that point, he might have already been a Hall of Famer, honestly.
Yeah.
If he was done by 04, 05. Now, I'm not sure about that. I really want to look at the numbers, but I think it's entirely possible. He was already a Hall of Famer kind of in stature with what he'd achieved by the time in 05, 06, Duncan Keith arrived at the Chicago Blackhawks for his first season. Anyway, Duncan's now going in the Hall of Fame and Jaromir plays on and is not eligible till 2029. At this point, quite honestly, I don't know. Like, I mean, he might just never let them induct him, because the other thing I should point out here, Julian, if he just plays one game this season, like if he doesn't play another one, well, he's already played the one game. That delays the start of the clock by a year. Like he doesn't have to have a full season. If he plays one game, either nationally for Czechia or internationally for Czechia or with a club team in Czech, he's not. That pushes it back a year. So, like if he played a full season last year essentially. He wanted to play earlier this year. He warmed up for a game on September 30th and then had like a muscle pull in the warm up. So, but like all signs are pointing to him playing regularly this year. I mean, as this goes along, he's just going to play one game here or there when he gets to 54 or 56 or whatever. So anyway, we should tip our hats to him if this isn't a stick tap day, but I'd stick tap him because I do admire the dedication, even if it's a little bit crazy.
By the way, because I had to look this up for myself, you said Duncan Keith began his career 05, 06?
Yep.
So 1990, so it was 1990, 1991, Jaromir Jagr's first season through to 2004. 537 goals scored, 1,309 points.
Yep.
And all of the individual awards he's had in his career, the 2 cups, all in that time period.
Plus the 98 gold medal at the Olympics with the Czechs.
Hall of Fame career.
Yeah. If he had stopped the day Duncan Keith entered the league, first of all, he just would have been in the Hall of Fame in 2008. Like, you know what I mean? Instead, it's going to be more than 20 years later before he's even eligible. Anyway, it just puts it into perspective how unusual this is. Like, this guy is literally on like his 4th generation of teammates. Like, he played on the 4th line the other night on Friday when he made his debut. The one guy on his line was 35, and I think the other guy was like 33 or 31. Point is, he played with 2 other veterans, and he's 20 years older than the guys he's playing with. Like, anyway, it's crazy all around. Crazy story indeed.
With that, we should get to Ask CJ. We got a few questions for you, Siege. Corey Oliver, you remember that one question we had a couple weeks ago where you had like those 4 different options? It looks like it's one of those.
Oh, no.
Steve Dangle waves his magic wand, and one of these comes true. Which do you vote for? Mario, I believe he probably means Mario Lemieux, succeeds Gary Bettman as NHL commissioner. An NFL-style realignment, 8 divisions of 4 teams, an 83-game regular season, a Winnipeg Jets Ottawa Senators Cup final, or Sidney Crosby traded to Buffalo and the Sabres go to the Eastern Conference final. This is a random as hell question, Corey.
It is. I'll go with the realigned divisions, even though that's probably like the least sexy of the 3. I actually think that one has the most merit. Like the other ones are like bordering kind of on absurd, whereas I think we need to shake up either the alignment or the playoff format or whatever, and I feel like that's the path to making me most happy. So, and I got to say, I'm a big NFL fan, so I think that I think they've got a lot of things figured out there in terms of their league.
Colin Bradbury wants to know, while investigating a sports-related story, have you ever uncovered a real deal hard news story by accident?
No, I don't think I have.
I don't think so.
I wasn't like looking for, a former line mate of a player and discovered a death or something, a murder in the process, or, but sports, I guess sports goes into real hard news at times, right? There's a real business aspect to things. I appreciate the spirit of the question. That's a really hard one though, to think. But I think the easy answer is no. I play in the sandbox for the most part.
Yeah. I'll say this though, like, I don't know why this makes me think of this, but like, I'm sure you have people who come up to you all the time and are like, yeah, like I want to have a career in like sports media, just like you. Like, what do I need to do that? One thing I like telling people when it happens to be, don't be afraid to work in news. Like, get an opportunity, whether it's through like the Canadian press or your local like TV outlet for CBC or CTV or whatever. Like, have that background in news and then
100%,
work your way up, like,
or business or anything. Honestly, like it all gives you the skills you need. You know, I did work in news. I was a news reporter at the Ottawa Citizen back in the day. And then when I worked in London, England for the Associated Press, I worked in news. So I've covered news. I've actually covered deaths and like unpleasant things. Not just big Stanley Cup final games. But I think you're right. That's great advice, Julian, because the skill sets, they're always useful. And, you know, especially I think business related things. Like I was just thinking, like, I guess I covered the lockout in 2012-13, which on one hand, that's a hockey story, but really that was a story about a $6 billion industry at the time having a major labor disruption. Like it really was, it was draped in hockey because there's hockey people involved, but truly it was covering a labor dispute from a big company. So I guess in a weird way, I have maybe uncovered a few actual, but not in the way I'm guessing the questioner meant. But yeah, it's not all just this guy scored 2 goals or this goalie sounded off on the play of his team.
This one from Matthew. Excuse me. How was your waterfront marathon experience on October 19th? And how many waterfront marathons have you participated in?
Best race going. I have to say, if anyone out here is listening and you're curious about running either a 5K, they have a 5K distance, they have a half marathon, they have a full marathon, and you live, even if you don't live in Toronto, honestly, travel in. Like there was people from all over the world here running yesterday. It was awesome. It was a bit of a muggy day. I would have turned the temp down a little bit if I had that ability, but thankfully the rain held off for us and I had so much fun. So I think that might be, I'd love to know the actual number. It's at least my 10th. I'll say that. Time doing the half marathon at that race. And I love it. Obviously I've done it the last 4 years without missing one. I think I first ran it, Julian, in 2008, I want to say, but I definitely ran it a bunch like 09, 10, 12. Like there might be a way to verify this, but anyway, it's at least 10 for me and I'll be back there next year. I can tell you already. And I had a great time. I was not pushing for a specific time goal yesterday. Just ran with my partner, Lindsay, and we had an awesome day running through the streets and the turnout is unbelievable. The volunteers are great. Like just can't say enough good things. So it's the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon. And I would encourage any runners to already start thinking about next year because it sells out early too. That's the other thing. Speaking
of running, today is supposed to be a pretty special day, is it not?
It is. Today's number 2000, but I haven't done my run yet. So I'm still stuck on 1999. Maybe I'll just hang it up. Maybe I'll just be like that.
No,
I'll just be like the TCS Toronto Waterfront half was the last day of my streak.
No.
And then I'm 1 day short of 2000. And no, I'm going to, at some point this afternoon, after getting some work done, I'm going to go out, keep the streak alive.
Maddie wants to know, how often do you ice your knees?
Never.
You don't ice your knees after a run?
Never.
You don't go like an ice bath?
No. I'm telling you, it's like seriously, just don't follow my lead. Like I don't do anything. I don't stretch. I don't do anything special.
You don't stretch? No, you're supposed to stretch.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that anyone else should do this. This really, it's like not financial advice. This is not physical exertion advice, but I literally just run every day. That's it. Like I drank a whole bunch of water after that race yesterday because I knew my muscles would be tight. Like I can feel it this morning, like that I ran 21K yesterday, but I'm old school. I don't know. I'm sure there's someone out there shaking their head because like I'm going to probably pay a price for this down the road, but I feel good. So like, I don't know if it works for you, why not keep going?
If it works for you, man.
I'm the Jaromir Jagr of like average Joe runners.
When you said you started running in like 2008, my first thought was, oh, that's probably the year Jaromir Jagr should have been in the Hall of Fame.
There you go. That was the first year I started distance running. Yeah, and I did have a period of time where I was kind of like let it slide the meantime, and I've been back on for the last 5.5 years without missing a day.
All right, it's time for Jay's fan reaction. We are recording our episode a couple hours ahead of Game 7. Some are calling this the biggest game since 1993. This is a massive day for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Seattle Mariners. At home, winner goes to the World Series to take on Shohei Ohtani and the Los Angeles Dodgers. How are you feeling, sir?
I feel resolute. I feel so friggin' confident that the Blue Jays are going to go out and win Game 7 and book a spot in the World Series. Like, I'm zen now. I know you're probably expecting me to be a ball of nerves and anxiety and loose ends, but I just look at this series, the best team. It's pretty clear which team has been the best team in this series. And it's not the one that comes from the Pacific Northwest. So it's going to be a bad night to be a Seattle Mariner down at the Sky Dome. And look, it's a statement of fact. You're saying some people are calling this is the biggest baseball game in Toronto since 1993. Like this, that's not even
1,000%.
There's not even a debate about that. I think where we could get into a debate, and I don't have a strong answer, but like, this is one of the biggest sporting events in decades held in Toronto. Obviously, the Raptors won the NBA title in 2019, so you'd factor that in. I don't know if you'd want to grab any of the Leafs games. Maybe not. They only have been to the second round going back the last 20-odd years. This is as big as it gets. And the Jays are one win away from bringing Shohei Ohtani finally on a plane to Toronto. But he's not coming here to he's not coming here to sign some big contract. He's coming here to have his heart broken. So let me tell you this.
It's spicy.
Aaron Judge, gone. Cal Raleigh. We'll see. But if the Jays win Game 7, he's gone. And then the biggest, baddest, most awesome player in baseball, like the coolest guy going. I have nothing against Shohei Ohtani.
Dog, he hit 3 home runs and pitched 6 shutout innings,
10
hit
strikeouts.
10.
Yeah, I mean,
we're talking about one of the greatest. This is GOAT conversation.
This is my point.
GOAT
I'm actually not hating on him. I'm just saying, I think the Jays, I don't know, they got something, man. I do feel like they're going to win tonight, which probably means usually when you feel confident as a sports fan, that's just when the rug gets pulled out. But I'll be down at the game. I'm really excited. Kind of the one thing that's lurking in my mind is the Jays really, gave away Game 5, specifically some of the decision making in that case. And so if they don't win Game 7, this is going to be like our true what could have been kind of series. Because I do think since the first 2 games, the Jays have largely been in control of things, other than the way it imploded on them in the 8th inning of the 5th game in Seattle. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling loose. It's going to be a great night. It's going to be so much fun. I'm pumped.
I can't wait for this game, man. This is going to be so fun.
Vladdy is having a moment. Like, we should just say that.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
he was born ready.
We should be making the statue right now. Now, I realize to get a statue, you got to win the thing. Like, you don't get a statue for having a great postseason and losing in Game 7 of the LCS. Like, that's just not the way statues work. Every statue, go to every arena, Julian, when you're touring the league, every statue has someone holding a trophy. But that's what it's going to take. But like Vladdy he's got the bona fides now. It's just like the team's got to get the job done. He's obviously got to keep performing, but he loves the heat. It's almost like he's getting cooler when everything around him's getting hotter. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the swag level's gone up a notch. Like, the confidence is just pouring out of him. I mean, we know this guy's an amazing talent. Like that, he didn't have anything to prove, I wouldn't say, or anything, but like the fact that he's doing what you want. This is what we want out of athletes, right? Like, the best athletes get on the craziest stage. I'm a big golf fan, as you know. Like, you loved when Tiger Woods won at the Masters, when there's just so much attention there. And he's gotten better when everyone else has a reason to be more nervous, or almost kind of thing. So I think a big Vladdy game in Game 7, he's going to be the LCS MVP as long as the Jays win the series and he doesn't go 0 for 10 in a Game 7 that stretches into. Anyway, I don't want to imagine worse. It's so funny how my brain always goes like, yeah, but this could happen. But anyway.
I don't know about you. I want to run through a wall right now. Do you want to run through a wall right now?
Yeah, it's still 9 a.m. Still like 10 a.m. here. Got a work day ahead, so I got to try to focus. That's going to be a hard thing to do.
You and I both, buddy. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of the CJ Show. Enjoy Game 7 and enjoy, excuse me, I don't know why my voice has been weird. Enjoy the slate of games in the NHL up until we come back later this week. And again, more importantly, enjoy Game 7 of Seattle versus Toronto. Thanks so much for listening, guys.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.